It is on this day, May 13th, 2025, that I finished Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This was such a good book. I was not anticipating this. I had no clue that this would go so hard. Even in there's some parts in the book where I was like, I'm not sure if this will play out. It played out. So let's jump right into non spoilers. And again, I think this one's also going to be very spoilers heavy because, oh my gosh, there's such crazy stuff happened in this book. Such crazy stuff happened in this book. Just like before, characters, fantastic. Love the characters. This is such a character driven story. The way the characters are written, I still don't have the words for it. They're just so realistic. They're genuine people, and everything they do feels like they are genuine people. There's a character that drives you fucking up the wall crazy, but it's very realistic that someone would be that way, so it's even more annoying because you know that it's true, it's reality, and you're just like, Urgh. So great at making you angry at characters, but also great at making you feel sympathy and all these different emotions for different characters. And sometimes you get so frustrated because the character's being stupid, but it also just makes sense. You know that that is something they would do. So phenomenal character work, just absolutely phenomenal. Everything feels very natural for all the characters, and it makes a lot of points about people are flawed. Everyone's flawed, and you choose what is forgiving and what is not forgiving in this series. And some of the other characters have to choose what they can forgive and what they can't forgive with the other characters. And it is so entertaining. Just the character interactions themselves are so entertaining. I'm always excited when certain characters show up and I'm like, how are they going to react? How are they going to react? So, character story. So good. Plot. I can't predict the plot for this series. I've given up. I sometimes I feel like I know where it's going, but a lot of the time she goes way off path. She's really good at just going completely different route than you were expecting. And there was a lot of times where I was like, okay, this is gonna recover at some point. Mm-mm. She really plays with your expectations, and she is really willing to do fucked up things for the characters and for the society. Um, some people describe this as grimdark. I've noticed that since the last one I read, and I was like, I don't know if it's quite grimdark. I see it now. I see it now. I see where this is going. I 100% believe this series is grimdark now. That was crazy. There were some crazy plot twists and crazy even like slow plot developments that I was like I didn't think she would go that far and she kept going. Very impressive. Also loved that so much. I didn't expect this book to go as far as it did, and it just kept going and it kept going and it kept going, and I was like, surely the bad things are gonna stop happening. Read and find out. So good. The world has been developed more, not too much more. There's actually a lot less locations in this book. There's a lot less traveling. I think almost the entire book he's just around Buckkeep, the main area. So a lot less like actual traveling, but a lot of world building in terms of the magic and in terms of the duchies. You learn a lot about the six duchies in this book in many ways that you didn't really get to address in book one. So some more world development. I think the world development that really matters is the magic system, and love, I love the magic system in this series, and I love the sheer amount of suspense the magic brings into this. I think half of the suspense and like the big reactions I have to do with the magic, and it drives me crazy. Um, I definitely was kicking and making a lot of sounds reading when I was reading this book because of certain reveals of the magic, and again, just the sheer like, ah, there were times where my heart was in my throat for the characters. And there were times that I cheered. that there were times that I cheered that like certain things were revealed, and there was other times I was like, "Oh my god, there's no way they just figured that out." So yeah, crazy. We talked about characters, we talked about world building, pros. Okay, we do need to touch on the pros. This is still unlike any series I have read. I remember last time I said that it's similar to one series I read. It was a sci-fi book. I can't remember what I said it was like. I think I said Ender's Game. I said Ender's Game. I don't even know if it's like that. It's so interesting to be reading a story that is in like a retrospect style. I guess I'm just not used to that. Technically, Dressing Files is that, but it doesn't feel like it. He kind of feels like he's narrating in the moment. This is like reflective writing, and I've gotten used to it. I think book one I wasn't used to it. I think I have really gotten used to it, and it just feels right now. There's something about the way that is written. It feels right for the series. Um, so I've been convinced. It's not something I'm used to. It's not something I've seen before, but I'm a fan. I really am a fan. I think it fits. It fits. Get it? Get it? That's very funny. I think it fits the series very well, and it's really growing on me a lot. And I sped through a lot of this book in just a few sittings. It took me a few weeks because some other things have been going on, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, because I don't want to detract from the book. But other things have been going on, but I did read this in just a few sittings. It is such a good book to me. I love it so much. I love it so much. This book made it onto my favorites list. I very much need to reevaluate my favorites list, but the rule is I'm only allowed 10. I'm only allowed 10 books on my favorite list. And I removed Shadows of Self for this book. I recently reread Shadows of Self, which is why I felt I could make that decision. And while Shadows of Self did have a crazy fucking thing at the end, which did make me cry the first time I read it, and I did have quite a reaction the first time I read it, this just has more moments. I feel Shadows of Self really only had like the one big moment. This just has a bunch of moments where I was reacting out loud. So it took the spot. This is officially on my 10 favorites list. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the top 10 books because I'm only allowed one book per series on my 10 favorites list, with the exception of Stormlight Archive and Dresden Files, until further notice. But still, fantastic book, made it onto some of my favorites of all time. Very excited to continue the series. Still gotta close out the trilogy, which is scary. We'll talk about this at the end of the video. So that is that. Crazy book. Such a crazy book. I think the only thing I have to say in non-spoilers, which is like towing spoilers, but I'm not gonna like actually like give names or anything. The romance plot is something. I won't elaborate beyond that. It is something. I'm not a big romance plot fan. I usually discourage, personally, like in my head, I discourage characters from romance plots. I definitely felt that with this book, where I was like, stop, you need to not do this. Personal take, that's how I felt. It was funny. It was Robin Hobb was great at really using the romance to drive character decisions and character development and bring some comedy in, but also bring a lot of seriousness in and themes on life. So I felt like it was a completely relevant romance plot in every regard, and every time it came up, it was kind of heart-wrenching because you're like, you knew where it was going, but also you didn't, but you really did know where it was going. So I approve of it in terms of the story. I'm still kind of anti the character doing it, but that's why it works. It's because you're like, no, don't do it, and he does, or he doesn't. Read to find out. Raffo. So, even incorporating plots that I don't usually like, it fits in so well. It fits in so well, and it really is a character development story. The characters are, again, phenomenal. I love them so much, or I really, really, really hate them. Those are like the two options. crazy reveals, crazy things in terms of like bold writing, bold things to write in a fantasy novel. She just went for it. I'm still a little surprised by how bold she was writing some of the things she wrote, but she did it in a way that it didn't feel that crazy, which I have mad respect for. I bet some people get really pissed about some things in this book. Um, I can't really explain why, but I'm sure some people do. I think it's kind of badass for her to go that far with it so boldly, and I think she did it great. So, singing the high praises for this book. Fantastic book. I adored this book. It was so good. With that, we're gonna go into spoilers. I don't have any water, which was a mistake because I that's the tradition. We'll just mime water. Please hydrate. It's good for you. Spoilers about this book. So much has happened since the halfway point in this book that I can't even recite much about the beginning of the book. I think one of the very few complaints I have, and it's not even a complaint, it's just a comment, is that the seizures weren't consistent. And partly that was because him being physical kind of stopped him from having seizures. So it makes sense that his seizures went away, but I think there maybe should have been like one or two sprinkled in, or at least like a comments on his seizures, so that you remember he has them. Because I think it's a very big deal early on in the series, in the book. It's a very big deal early on in the book, and then like there's this point where he starts training again to row the boat, and then he just stops having them entirely until the very end of the book. And I completely forgot about his seizures in that time period. At the start of the book, I mostly commended him having a disability. But, you know, he was going through the process of understanding having a disability, and he went a little bit too far with it, but you knew that he's learning, right? You can't blame someone. You can't blame a writer for writing someone struggling having a disability initially, because that's how it goes. And it seemed like he was going to adapt to it, but it kind of just went away entirely until the end of the book. So I think there could have been a little bit more balance there. But, I mean, I think it also makes sense. We don't really know what his condition is. No one really knows what his condition is, and it seemed he is young, and he has a lot of, again, doing a lot of like fitness and training, and all the magic he has. I think it does make sense to some degree. That's my minor complaint. That's starting with the beginning of the book. He's disabled a little bit. He has seizures. And then he kind of goes into training. He becomes well, he already was a Kingsman, but he becomes an assistant to Verity, and he starts learning the skill with Verity, which is entertaining. He doesn't get to do it a lot at the beginning of the book, but later in the book, he does a lot of skill training with Verity, and he picks up the axe. Oh my gosh. I know I'm skipping so much at the beginning of the book. He picks up the axe, and he starts having to go kill Forged for Verity, and he's getting attacked by the Forged. And there's a whole side note that we'll get to in just a second. Just a second. But he also finds out that Molly's alive. He originally thought Molly was dead, finds out Molly is alive. Molly's working in the keep, so then there's the whole romance plot with Molly. And that's going on the entire book. And it keeps going back and forth between it'll work out, it won't work out, it'll work out, it won't work out. And there's a point where you're like, you need to give up on this. I sided with Burridge. I was like, Burridge, you're so real, he needs to give up on this. And Chade also was like, you can't really offer her anything. And I was like, he can't. But he was so determined back and forth, and Burridge is the kind of person who is like, go get her. And I was like, eh. And then sometimes it worked, and sometimes Burridge was like, maybe you shouldn't, especially towards the end. And so there was such a balance of like characters not necessarily holding the same opinion and adapting their opinion as they go, which is real people. Anyway, that was great. I'm not going to comment too much more about the Molly thing, with two exceptions. Okay. Fitz, Kingsman, is killing Forged for Verity. Is starting to go out on the boats to fight Forged for Verity, which is also crazy. And there's a lot of intense fighting. And he sees the white ship. White ship, huge deal. We only get to see it like 2 to 3 times. Very curious to learn more about that, because it seems like there's some extra stuff going on based on some reveals at the end of the book. Again, we'll get there if I remember by the time we get to the end of the book. I don't have any notes today, by the way. I'm just going off of memory. I have so much to say about this book. He starts getting drunk. Molly has opinions on people being drunk, and so every time I was like, oh no. I can only imagine. So there's so much like strenuousness, strain. There's so much strain in their relationship, and it was like, and it got to the point that our dear Fitz, our dear main character, was feeling so lonely that he went into Bucktown. Is it called Bucktown? He went into town to get a wolf in a cage, and I was like, oh my god. I was losing my mind when that began, because I was like, this is going to be fantastic and horrifying. I was so excited to have him juggling another thing. I feel so bad for Fitz. Fitz is definitely juggling his life in an unbelievable way, and it really, really reminisces, spy work in general. And he's juggling all these aspects of his life, and he adds another one by getting a wolf and telling himself that he won't use the wit. I did not believe him for a second. I knew that stuff was going to happen, and it kept like being gradual. He was like, all right, I'm refusing, I'm just feeding him back to health, and I'm just helping, I'm gonna help him hunt so that I can let him go into the wild afterward. And he keeps living this double life. And he's worried about Birch finding out, because Birch knows when he uses the wit, because Birch has the wit, which is a reveal from the last book that I'm still reeling over, by the way. I fucking love Birch. Still fucking love Birch in this book, by the way, too. Whole other note. He's scared of revealing that to Birch and Shade and everyone else, and he's hiding everything from Molly entirely. And Verity starts going on little trips in his mind, and so then he has to try to keep the wolf out of his mind when Verity is in his mind, so Verity doesn't find out about the wolf magic. It turns out Ketrican also has the wit, but she uses it differently and rarely, so we don't know much about that, but that was also a fascinating reveal. I want to know more about that. Pretty please. I don't know if we'll get to. I have no idea what's going to happen with Ketrican. That's a whole other note. Crazy. But Verity starts doing these rides with him, and the wolf is starting to get into his mind too. The wolf being Night Song? No. Night Song is a Sanderson thing. It's Night Eyes. I can't believe I went straight to Sanderson. Night Eyes. So Night Eyes the wolf and Verity are both invading his mind. And so this entire book, it's a lot about the privacy of his mind and the balance of that. And then the previous Coterie members from the previous book are also prying into his mind. And so Fitz really is going through a lot. He doesn't have his own privacy anymore, and he has to deal with balancing that. And what little of a life he kind of has at points, particularly with some of his jobs, or again, loneliness of people abandoning him for all kinds of reasons, either leaving to go on long missions, or because he really fucked up a relationship, or because he used the wit when he shouldn't be, or should be. You can argue that he needed to, but also maybe he didn't. Definitely made some stupid decisions at some points in the book, but again, it felt like stupid decisions he would make. So he's balancing all these things in his head. And there are some crazy scenes that, again, I was kicking my feet when they were happening, because I had no idea how bad it would be. There was the first time that Verity was in his mind and Night Eyes spoke, and I was like, oh my god, he's gonna know. And then he didn't know. But then Fitz went to abandon Night Eyes and got most of the way, and then got attacked by Forge Ones and was gonna die, and then Night Eyes saved him and said, we are Pack. Crazy. And then Burrich and Verity show up, and there's bite marks in the forged ones, and so Burrage knows. Burrage knows about the wolf, and I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. And there's that scene where Verity, Burrage, and Fitz are all in the room, and Burrage goes to speak against having to train Fitz, and I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be it. But then he yells at Verity for sacrificing Fitz, which is also crazy, and then all of them get in an argument, and I was like, is he not going to complain about the wit? He didn't. But he's also, like, personally pissed about it, and throughout the book, you can see him going back and forth on disagreeing with Fitz and agreeing with Fitz, and it's, like, bouncing back and forth, back and forth. Way later, Chade finds out, and Chade stares at him, and Chade is like, we use every weapon we can get. I kind of expected more, but also I'll take that scene, too. That scene was still pretty good. Another crazy moment. There's so many examples. Half of this book is examples of people invading his mind, and there's a lot of crazy ones like the king skilling to Verity through Fitz, also fascinating. But I think one of the ones I have to talk about for how audacious it was for Robin Hobb to write is Night Eyes taking control of Fitz's body and Molly showing up during the time that Night Eyes was in control, and Fitz just comes to the next day with Molly there in his room. That is crazy. I love the audacity. I have so much respect for Robin Hobb, personally. I realize so many people probably, like, lost their minds at that. I think that was crazy to write, and it really, really shows what the wit does. I think that interaction or that, like, passage of time really shows the power of the wit and probably why the wit is treated the way it is and the way that Fitz complained at first but forgot about it. And I think that shows a lot about Fitz as a character, that he at first was very upset at the trespass and privacy, but then was like, we are Pack, I'm not going to make an issue of it anymore because you just don't understand. And so the communication between him and Night Eyes was very important from then on, because there were some things that Fitz just gave up explaining to Night Eyes. He would try to explain, Night Eyes wouldn't get it, and he'd be like, I'll postpone this for later, but he doesn't get to it later. So, very significant, very important, and it shows a lot about the character development and the use of the wit, which keeps getting used, and then Burge gets pissed again, and I love when Burge is pissed. I don't know why, I love every Burge interaction, because Burge keeps going back and forth between being pissed at Fitz, but also being like, you're kind of a son to me, and I love it. I eat it up. It's so good. It's so good. Verity, fantastic character. I thought it was crazy that Verity left. That was a crazy decision. It makes sense. It was also a crazy decision. I really thought they were going to send someone else, but the fact that he went himself, people died. We also know that the Forged ones were after Verity, which is crazy. I suspected as much. I really did. And then it wasn't mentioned until, like, one of, like, the pre-chapter notes way later that the Forged ones were after Verity, and I was like, that's concerning. Also, they were attacked on the road. I wonder who that was. Prince Regal. Hate him. There are a few characters I have hated as much as I hate Prince Regal. And it's not even that he's, like, doing the most terrible shit, because there's definitely characters I've read that do way worse stuff than Regal. I've read some very evil characters. Regal's just frustrating. Regal's so incredibly frustrating because he's so dumb. He's smart but dumb. He's able to plot and plan his scheme and figure out, like, things that will keep him from being caught. So he's capable in that way, but he's just so blind to what royalty is and means, and he wants the throne so bad, but I don't think he understands what having a throne is. So frustrating, this book. Everything he does, it's like, you are being a complete idiot, even if you get to be king, which he does, by the way, which is also crazy. Didn't think that would happen. Even when you get to be king, I don't think it's going to be what you make it out to be. So, crazy. Dude wanted to be a king, but I think he really didn't want to be. We'll have to see next book. Whole other thing. Hate him. Despicable. Hate him. I don't even remember what I was saying before because I got so pissed about Regal. Reveals. Oh my god, what was I saying? Regal sent the attack onto Prince Verity. Regal tried to kill Ketrican. Crazy. Multiple times Regal has tried to kill Fitz. No one's surprised about that. Tortured Fitz at the end. Not surprised about that either. Killed his father. Crazy. Crazy thing to do. My computer's dying because I forgot to plug it in. 1 second. He killed his own father at the end of the book through the coterie, which is crazy. Did not predict that. I don't know why it didn't occur to me. It makes so much sense. It did not occur to me. I was like, the coterie doesn't know how to do that. They knew how to do that. Also, the coterie attacking Fitz and then Night Eyes attacking through Fitz. Crazy. Also, Robin Hobb, fantastic, and bringing in little details earlier in the book in later. I was worried about that. When the little girl at the well spotted him with the wolf, I was like, this could just be a character point. But it feels like more than that. It came up at the end of the book. So good. So well done. And yeah, there's the reveal. Oh my god, that was crazy. There was the one of you has child. It's either Ketrican or Molly. The fool. Oh my god. The fool is the one who's like, there's a new Farseer. Whose is it? You have to find out. And I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be Molly. It's gonna be Molly. And then turns out Molly, it wasn't. It was Ketrican, which was also scary. It was interesting how equally scary those were. Either Ketrican is going to be in massive danger, or another bastard son was going to happen, which would also be very bad for Fitz and everyone else. Yikes. So that was very interesting. Ketrican going to battle with the baby, crazy, awesome. Love her. She kicks so much ass. I love Ketrican. She's also pure entertainment. Verity, Burrich, Ketrican, even Patience sometimes. All very entertaining for me. Chade was very on and off in this book. I feel like some Chade scenes I was kind of like, okay, cool. And some Chade scenes I was like, ooh. So it really went back and forth. The reveal that Chade was the one poisoning the king, crazy. Made so much sense. It made so much sense after the first time the king skilled through Fitz. Made so much more sense. But at first I was like, you're the one poisoning the king? What? Crazy. Also, hate Wallace. Wallace is also despicable if I hate him. Mostly because of Regal. But Wallace is just really annoying. Going back to the Fool. I love the Fool. I love the Fool so much. Fool is also a top tier character. Probably on par with Birch for me. This Fool was a very, very substantial character in this book. And you could tell that Fitz and the Fool's relationship is teeter-tottering throughout this book. And Fitz flat out says it several times. There's a lot of times that they come into conflict because the Fool's priority is King Shrewd. And Fitz's priority is Verity / anti-Regal. And it really comes to conflict because the Fool really, really wants to stand by King Shrewd, which doesn't work out well for him. I don't know what the Fool's going to do next book. That's going to be crazy. Huge deal. And the Fool really has a lot of prophecies in this book, and he says a lot of things that really lead Fitz onto the path he goes. One of the things, Fitz says that he doesn't understand it. I think he understood. One of the things that the Fool flat out said earlier on in the book was that Fitz has to use his wits. And I was like, Fitz has to use the wit. Interesting. Fitz used the wit. That was the solution of the book at the end. There was also a lot of other times that he used the wit that helped save him. So it's very curious to know which one he was kind of alluding to. I think it would be so fascinating on a reread to look at all the Fool's predictions and see if any of them miss, and see how many of them are just as people say, where they're so generic that they apply. I'm so curious to see if Robin Hobb balanced both those things to make it so it seems like a premonition, but it's also not. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Let's see. What else? What else? The Fool having his room destroyed and getting beat up twice was also crazy. I did not anticipate that kind of attitude towards the Fool, and I was really worried about the Fool at points, even though I knew that there's a trilogy later on in the series where the Fool is in the name. Very curious to learn more about the Fool. Very curious about the Fool and Fitz's relationship. Very curious to see what's going to happen to the Fool next book. What will the Fool do now that King Shrewd is dead? Also, the Fool consistently called Fitz the Catalyst, and that was also very fascinating, and it really started bothering Fitz. And then towards the end, Burrich started calling Fitz Changer, which is also fascinating. It seemed like a wit version, in a way. The Wolf calling Burrich Heart of the Pack, crazy. Fascinating. I love Burridge's character development with the wit so much because he hates it so much, and he's the character that has it. It's I eat it up. I know I've already said that, but it's one of my favorite things. I don't know what to say. I enjoy it so much. And the interactions between Burrich and the Wolf, fascinating. And the last thing I'll talk about, because I could keep going all day about this book. There's so much to talk about this book. The end of the book. The end of the book is crazy. He kills himself to go into Night Eyes' body and lives as a wolf. Burrich digs up his body. And this was all a plan, and Burrich approved this plan, told Chade. Chade agreed to do it, which is also crazy, and I want to know more about that too. I don't think I'll get to. Digs up Fitz's body and convinces Night Eyes, I guess, sort of, like, repels Night Eyes to force Fitz back into his body so Fitz is alive again. That is crazy. That's crazy to do in the last chapter of a book, the page before the epilogue. Insane. That is crazy. It was really hard to tell what was going to happen because he kept going back and forth, and he used the poison on Will. Hate Will. Hope Will dies. Also, the frenzy in which Fitz fights is also crazy. The way he stabbed, what was his name? Justin? The way he stabbed Justin in the dining hall, crazy. Whole other note, though. The end of the book was crazy. It went from King Shrewd is dead to Fitz is trying to sacrifice himself. He gets a knife and goes to kill the coterie members and hunt them down. And so he's like being really, really like all out with that. Crazy. Gets arrested, is in jail, is being tortured, and Regal just has to prove that he used the wit to be able to kill Fitz. Fitz knows he's going to die, and so he went to try to take Regal with him, and there were a lot of options. He could have killed himself, he could have taken Regal with him, he could have given up everything, and I believed that was a possibility with Robin Hobb because of all the other shit that has happened in this book. A lot of bad things have happened. I'm surprised there are even still 6 duchies at this point. I'm shocked. Crazy things have happened in this book. So I was like, it's possible that he might give in and they might hunt down certain characters. It'd not be great. But he didn't. He died. Not even intentionally. He kind of accidentally died. He did end up like biting the pouch, but that was after he had a seizure. 2 seizures. Crazy developments. And then again, he completely died. Burrich digs up his body in the last, like, 2 pages of the book before the epilogue, digs up the body, gets him back in the body, and he says, and I quote, "You know you're in for a ride when the last chapters are called Capture, Torture, and Execution." Crazy. He says, and I quote, we're struggling to... "You're not dead, son. You're not dead." So good. Drove me crazy. I immediately went into some chats and hit caps lock and started typing. I needed to get some energy out after reading that. Crazy. And then, just to, like, extra audacity, has a 2-page epilogue. Like, you read that, and then all you have left is a 2-page epilogue. Crazy. So good. To me, it has Change's energy. If you have read Changes by Jim Butcher, I know they're very different in many ways. This book has Change's energy for me, and that is part of why I enjoy it so much. It's crazy to write a lot of the things that happen in this book, and I love it. I love it so much. I think I maybe went a little bit too far with this rambling today, but there's so many moments I didn't even touch on in this book. Ketchikan being attacked by the Forge just taking out, like, one of the cities, and they just going to fight, like, on the spot. There's so many things in Night Eyes that happened that are, like, unhinged. There's so much to talk about. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. It's not even that complex a magic system in terms of, like, it's not very... I have to sneeze. 1 second. Sorry. It's not a magic system that would be complicated to think of. It's a magic system that you would think most people would have considered and thought about, but the way she executed it, even though you know it's not... I don't want to say it's not a unique idea, because it is a unique idea. She's the one who executed it. But, like, you know, like, mind control and, like, human-to-human communication and human-to-animal communication isn't really a new idea in fantasy or other genres too, sci-fi and other things, even real life. But the way it's done makes it feel like it's a new idea, and it's executed so well. I wish I had the better words to explain that, but, like, the wit and the skill aren't, like, super audacious magic ideas. It's not like Sanderson where you swallow metal and then you can burn metal in your body. It's not like that. It's literally you use your mind and you can communicate to either humans or animals. But the way it's developed and the suspense and the witch hunts relevant to it and the history relevant and the way he has to keep it all secret from different people, it makes it so much more valuable. So, absolutely fascinated by the wit. Very curious about the skill. He did manage to skill on his own towards the end there, which is fascinating. I have no idea. What's in store with this book. I can't even guess what this is about, given he died at the end of this book. I don't know what the next book's about. With that said, we'll get into what's new and what's next at 40 minutes. As you likely guessed, what is next is Assassin's Quest. Shocking. But it has a caveat of this other book I am also reading at the same time. This is How You Lose the Time War. Very small book, but it is a time travel book, so I assume it's very dense. The plan is to try to finish this before I move, and I'm moving next week. So, not a lot of time, but it's not too long, supposedly. So the goal is to read this book, as well as this book, probably at the same time. We'll see. Since this book isn't too long, I might just try to finish this first, especially if it is as dense as I'm worried it is. But this comes recommended from my sister, And every once in a while, I try to read a recommendation for my family. So this is my recommendation of the year. And I want to know what happens in the next chapter of Robin Hobb's Farseer. I am so excited. So those are what's next. You may be wondering, do I have any new books? Yes, I do. I am so smitten with this series, with only the first 2 books, that I bought the first book of the second trilogy, and I bought it in the nice editions, and this is me committing to buying these in the nice editions as well. I just ordered this trilogy in this edition because my family gifted me money, because I meant to say this at the start, I just graduated college. That's my cap. I was gifted money, and I used that money to buy this trilogy. Is that a why I used my money? We're not going to talk about it. But that's what I did. So I will be collecting at least the first 2 trilogies. I know that many people like the first 2 trilogies the most. Some people like one of the later trilogies. I see no reason to read all 9, because if it's even like a little bit worse, I bet it's worth reading. It's definitely, I'm willing to take the risk. I don't know if I'll buy all of them. I might library the subsequent series after the second trilogy. But if I like them, then I'll commit to getting them. Honestly, it's so good. I'm only 2 books in, and I'm losing my mind. So I went ahead and invested. Quite an investment, I will say. I actually bought my roommate The Left Hand of Darkness, which I read last year. So that was a separate purchase I made. I don't technically own it. My roommate does. But I'm going to go ahead and mention that one. Another purchase I made, and this is another redundant purchase, because again, I already own these, but I bought them again. Another redundant purchase. I used to have this book, Wrath of Empire, which is the second book of the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy. This is the UK edition, and it's really been bothering me, because if you look up here, all of these are US editions, and this was a different size. This was shorter than all the rest. So I finally, with the money I got for graduation, bought the American edition, so the size actually matches all the others. You can see they're pretty different sized. So I finally have a copy that matches all the ones up here, because it's been driving me crazy for years. And it's just another book I get to donate to the library, which is something we're going to talk about at the end of this video here. But finally got the correct size of Wrath of Empire. Another beautiful cover. I love all of Brian McClellan's covers. I think the one I like the least is, well, the one I like the least is the new Glass Immortals book. I'm not a huge fan of that cover, but I mean, in Powder Mage, the one I like the least is the second one. It's not even that bad. It's just less colorful than all the others. But I love these covers. Alright, another book I got is hidden on the shelf here. I got Project Hail Mary. I have read The Martian, but I have not read Project Hail Mary. Everyone's been talking about Project Hail Mary, and I figured if there is another sci-fi book I'm going to promise to read, it'd be Project Hail Mary. So I got this book, and it now sits on the shelf behind me. I believe those are all the books I bought. I'm going to look real quick. I think y'all were here for Stone Sky. I believe that is all the books I have bought. I'm fairly sure that is all the books I have bought. The last thing we have to talk about are books I am getting rid of or donating. And there's actually a lot of these. One, I'm donating the UK edition. But I am getting rid of a lot of books because I can only fit so much on the bookshelf. And while I can stack higher above there, that's actually where my diploma is going to be going. And I think it's time to give back a little bit with how many books I've purchased, because I own more than 100 books now. The mass market Miss Forney is going away. These hurt my eyes to read. They really do. it's the fact that the text goes to the very middle of the page. It really does hurt my eyes to read. And I will eventually get the UK editions. It might be a while because UK shipping is expensive. Like, to ship to the United States from the UK, it's a little rough. I really, really miss you, Book Depository. I miss you so much. So it might be a while, but I am gonna donate these so other people can read Mistborn. I already did my reread of the first two anyway, or the first two books, so I can always go to the library and reread the third. So those will be going. I am getting rid of Neverwhere. Few reasons for this. Not even talking about the author. Separate from that issue, I don't plan to get any more of these, and I don't like having like matching books by themselves. Like, if I bought just one of these Sanderson books by itself and none of the others, I feel they'd look a little awkward. That's how I feel about this. I bought this with the intent of buying other ones, but since I don't plan to buy any others, there's no reason to keep this book. And I didn't even like this book that much, as y'all recall. I talked about how much I really struggled with the prose, and I struggled understanding the book, and it wasn't that interesting to me, and I think there's no reason for me to keep it, so I'll be getting rid of it. Let's see. This is a really rough one. I don't know if I'm donating these or just temporarily banishing them. I feel really bad. The Greatcoats Tetralogy. I really want to read this. I really do. I bought all 4 of these planning to do a read-along back in 2020. And I did the read-along for the first book. And then I fell behind with the second book because I had AP exams and I didn't own the book yet. I was waiting. And I fell behind in the read-along, so I never made it that far. But I tried to reread this book in the last few months, and I could not make it past the first few chapters because it just... I don't know how to say it other than it felt cringy to me. And I feel bad using the word cringy, but it really did. I think... I'm a little worried that my standards with my reading have raised even higher because of a lot of the reading I've done since I read this. I've read a lot of really, really good books since I read this book, and it was really hard to read. I was really struggling to reread this. I could not reread this and go straight to the second book, because I hear people say the second book is better, and that he improves with the books. I know a lot of people really like the series. I love the concept. I really do. I love the concept of Greatcoats. I think the world building in book 1 left things to be desired. The plot in book 1 left things to be desired. The characters in book 1 left things to be desired. And the more I think about book 1, the more I'm like... But I don't want to judge the other 3 books based off of that. To some degree, I have faith that he'll improve. But to some degree... I can read these in the library if I do want to try again. I don't have to own them. And the covers don't even match. They don't match. They are all different styles. So, I'm debating getting rid of these. I'm unsure yet. People can try to convince me to try Greatcoats again if y'all think it really does improve. I'm really not sure about the first book. I've been thinking about lowering my rating of the first book, which is... It feels harsh, but that's how I'm feeling with the attempted reread. And then... some more books I'm probably going to get rid of. Another one where I feel really bad saying it, but... I'm debating getting rid of Midnight Riot. I don't plan to buy the whole series. I might read the whole series one day, because... I do have friends that have continued the series and they really like it. I didn't like this first book. I loved the first, half of it. But the villain really got on my nerves in this book. And I remember talking about that in my review of it. He just really, really got on my nerves. It was not entertaining to me. I'm sure the other books are great. And I loved a lot of aspects of it. but I don't know if I'll buy them all. There's a lot of books, and they're all really small, and I can again rent them through the library, and someone else can have this edition, and I'll be happy to let them have it. So I'm thinking of donating this. And then another complicated one, a very complicated one, Rhyuria. So I don't own book one of Rhyuria in physical. I own book one of Rhyuria as audiobook. UK audiobook, in fact, because my friend bought it for me, which is very nice of her. Love her. She really wants me to read this series. She also told me that you should really read a prequel trilogy before you read Rhyuria Revelations. And so I don't even own the books I'm supposed to read first. I technically own the sequel trilogy. I'm a little confused about the reading order and how that works, but she told me to read another few books first. And so these are really down the line. I don't quite know why I own them. I know I got one of them at a used bookstore, and that's part of why, is because I was at a very cheap used bookstore, and I was like, well, why not? But this is another one where maybe I should do library first, because I still don't know if I like this series. I'm very unsure, and I know it's another long series. It's kind of like Farseer, or it's kind of like Realm of the Otherlings, in that it has multiple series and a lot of books total. So again, unsure on what I'm going to do with these books, because it feels awkward to have just 2 and 3, and I don't even know if I'll make it to 3. I have a bad habit of buying a few too many books. My rule of thumb in my head is the first 3. When it's a trilogy, that means you're reading the full trilogy, so maybe I should reevaluate that. But yeah, I'll do some more research into this. And then I don't know where it is. Oh, it's right here. I'm just blind. After I read these, I'm going to donate these as well. Because I like having mystery books, like, continuing their cycle, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. I don't know how else to say it. Like, the mystery books are the books where I like them used. I know that sounds weird, but I prefer, like, used mystery books, but, like, I like new fantasy books. So I like to, like, keep spreading these around. So after each of these are read, which I'll get to them, I'm sure, they will each be donated as well. I believe that is it for donated books, really. I gave one to my sister. I gave Transmorgify to my sister, the trans book. So yeah, now if we look at the bookshelf, we got Chris Verrocchio, and then this is where Farseer is, right here. It's up here. And then 1,000 Names. Also insert on 1,000 Names. It's a series I want to read, but it's really hard to get your hands on. Whole Powder Mage. We have 3 Body Problem, and then Alistair Reynolds, and then Broken Earth Trilogy. All my Sanderson books, all my Butcher books, and then we got The Expanse, and Faithful and the Fallen. I really want to read Faithful and the Fallen. I hope we get to soon. And then a bunch of the random books I have. I'm still unsure on getting the 9th. I'm going to try again at some point, but I don't think it's that time yet. Alright. I know I rambled about a lot of extra things that don't really matter. But main takeaways are, these are the books I'm reading. I am committed to Robin Hobb. I'm buying more Robin Hobb books, including the sequel series. And I think that means that I will be reading the sequel series after I finish Farseer. The camera is out of focus. So I think we're going to continue that path, and we'll see how far we make it in Realm of the Elderlings. And I graduated. And so there will be more reading in the future. There'll be a lot of reading in the future. I will be moving. I'm moving next week. So this very temporary setup is a temporary setup. I will say where I'm moving won't have a good camera setup either. We'll have a worse camera setup, and I'm not taking my books with me. So it'll be interesting. We'll figure out how I film my book videos in my new location. It's not going to look pretty. I can tell you that right now. But I'll see you all in the future when I finish more books. Hope you have a good one. I'll see you all with the next book I finish. Bye-bye.